You good people. Took a week off. Sorry about that. Back, ready to go strong here. Oh, my echo cancellation isn't working. There we go. That should fix it. In her 1974 speech to the graduating class at West Point Military Academy, some of the best, brightest, and bravest. 1974, Ayn Rand gave her talk, Philosophy Who Needs It? And after making the case for the crucial impact of philosophy and the importance of taking philosophical ideas seriously, she stated, and I quote, "The assignment I gave for myself for tonight is not to sell you on my philosophy, but on philosophy as such. I have, however, been speaking implicitly of my philosophy in every sentence, since none of us and no statement can escape from philosophical premises. What is my selfish interest in the matter? I am confident enough to think that if you accept the importance of philosophy and the task of examining it critically, it is my philosophy that you will come to accept. Formally, I call it objectivism, but informally, I call it a philosophy for living on Earth." Unquote. Now, if this is true, if objectivism is a philosophy for living on Earth, the owner's manual that we and our parents should have been given upon our birth in the hospital, but wasn't, then it stands to reason that objectivists should, and other things being equal, will be among the most successful, the most self-confident, the most benevolent, the most gracious, the most classy, stylish, optimistic, happiest people on Earth. Now, of course, some of us, present company most emphatically included, and if the shoe fits, consider it yours too, we come into life in general, and objectivism in particular, with a lot of baggage and limitations and handicaps and compelling reasons for seeking philosophic guidance and challenges that we seek to overcome, personal, psychological, financial, otherwise. And we seek this by cracking open the manual. And we simultaneously have a passion to share and spread these ideas. We see that the world, as much as we are surrounded by abundance, miracles, progress, the world isn't what it should be. And philosophic error and existential evils have way too much power over our lives. And so we study philosophy. We study Ayn Rand. We read Leonard Peikoff and Harry Binswanger and countless other writers within objectivism and non-objectivists in the broader world of philosophy and life coaching and self-improvement. And then we try to live up to these ideals. I get a question right in the chat here, Clubhouse after. If you go on Clubhouse, you'll see, yes, I have scheduled a Clubhouse chat after. Good to see you all in the chat. Jeff Bannister is in with a generous super chat. Thank you for that. He's not asking a question, but I've actually got a question from a previous episode from Jeff to answer. So we are going to do that. So yes, we discover these ideals. We try to live up to them. And it isn't always easy to take action. But also, it isn't always easy to know what to do, to know how to apply philosophic principles to our real lives. And so I find it enormously valuable, both in applying these ideas and in spreading them, to be able to bring to mind both the rich and deep and broad interconnected system of thought, which is now available to us, and also to summarize these in my own mind and explain them in as brief a manner as the context requires. See, there's a curious mistake that some of us make in attempting to persuade others of the ideas and the ideals that we hold. Maybe you've never done this, but some of us are familiar with this. I'll make it personal. When I was in high school, now that's public school in the United States. I guess public school means the opposite in the UK, but government schools. When I was in government school, when I was a teenager, I first read The Fountainhead in a class on fiction. It was one of 3 options that we were given. And a friend of mine who had already read it, he said it's something like, "Oh yeah, pick the Fountainhead. It's really cool." Cool. And it was really cool. And that was about it. The main character, an architect with incredible integrity. And he seemed impervious to the opinions or criticisms of others. That was inspiring to a high school kid. So, yeah, I want to be more like that. But while I really enjoyed the book, and it might have made me a little better person at the time, well, it didn't make me think, wow, I need to find out what this author was thinking. See, that didn't happen until my mid-20s. I ran into the novel again, I reread it, and I was awestruck by the kind of independence and greatness of spirit that it presented. So I went on to look for other works by the same author, this Ayn Rand, who surprisingly turned out to be a woman. I mean, you got to remember, before you'd ever heard of Ayn Rand. And I found Atlas Shrugged. I read Atlas Shrugged, and I went from thinking about the Fountainhead, this is great, to reading Atlas Shrugged and thinking, oh my gosh, this is true. This is an accurate description of life and morality and what's going on in the world. So I went from this is great to this is true, and the rest is history. But that history involved discovering this author, this Ayn Rand, who, again, amazingly turned out to be this woman who lived in the early to mid-late 1900s. She had written nonfiction too. Like, oh, well, if I want to find out what more of this person thought, and she actually wrote nonfiction books, that's great. That was very provocative. And the process of learning her ideas, and see if you recognize this, the process of learning Ayn Rand's ideas, of going from having no idea who this person was to learning this fascinating, compelling, and ultimately simply true system of thought. That was a long one. It took some time. It didn't happen in an afternoon. And once I got her politics down, well, of course, I wanted these ideas to change the world. And I wanted to play a part in making that happen. And I would talk to peers, coworkers, friends, family about these ideas. But it turned out the most that I could do was encourage people to go out and read Ayn Rand. And if they chose to do so, I could help them understand what I had come to understand. But here's what didn't work. Now, these early years, this was before the turn of the century, the late 1900s, before the internet was everywhere and before social networks. So my evangelizing was mostly in person, in meet space, in real life, at the workplace, at parties, bars, social occasions. And what didn't work was to lose patience with my peers, to accuse people after a conversation or two of ignorance or evasion, because they didn't get objectivism. They didn't understand Ayn Rand and agree with her, after an hour or 3 hours of talking to me. Sure, it took me years to come to understand and agree with Ayn Rand, but these lucky friends and coworkers of mine, they had the benefit of my superlative presentation, my compelling explanations, my enormous passion, and of course, my complete, absolute, unerring commitment to reason and logic. Clearly, they were complete subjectivists, refusing to understand and agree with me, and probably harbored a nihilistic death premise, or maybe two. Now, besides the obvious roadblock, my limited time and context, and my finite intellectual talents, and my limited level of persuasiveness, I had another handicap, or a set of handicaps. You decide. I wasn't rich. I wasn't particularly handsome. And I wasn't as self-confident as I would eventually be. Now, I did have one thing going for me, even at that tender age in my late 20s and 30s. And that was, I was surprisingly happy. And for people who saw that, and people for whom, that was a priority, people who cared about being happy and having some degree of at least intellectual self-confidence, that was leverage. That had an impact. That got a few people to say, why are you so happy all the time? I first read Ayn Rand. I was managing fast food restaurants. Why are you work in a fast food restaurant? Why are you a happy person? Brings to mind Tal Stefani's series, The Happiest Man Alive. So that gave me some leverage. And I was pretty good at essentializing. And we have another super chat. I've got to say thank you for the super chat. I'll take a moment to do this commercial break because Michael Sweet was so good as to put in $5 in the super chat and says, oh, those early days of studying objectivism. Those stories are great with an adult beverage and good friends. They sure are. We have, of course, we tell these stories at Great Lakes Objectivists, the group that we run in Southeast Michigan. Apollo Zeus is being his charming self in the chat and right back at you. But yes, and Kindred Amy says, death premise, yes. So easy to lob those bombs. Works every time, doesn't it? Very compelling, very convincing. So again, I was pretty good at giving people a sense of, well, at least these ideas can give you some degree of self-confidence, some degree of happiness. And I was pretty good at essentializing. I was pretty good at boiling it down. It's not too hard, actually, because I was studying the best person at going from, basics, fundamentals, to essentials, and then to examining the broadest contexts and to integrating those into a set of principles. Ayn Rand was once asked to present, she said, the essence of my philosophy while standing on one foot. And she did so brilliantly. And then she explained why philosophy cannot be discussed while standing on one foot, nor while standing on 2 feet on both sides of every fence. And here, let me quote from her essay, Introducing Objectivism. She wrote, at a sales conference at Random House, preceding the publication of Atlas Shrugged, one of the book salesmen asked me whether I could present the essence of my philosophy while standing on one foot. Stop the quote for a second there. I don't hear that as much anymore, but it used to be a cute figure of speech. The idea that, can you do X, whatever quick thing while standing on one foot. So she went on. She says, I did as follows. 1, metaphysics, objective reality. 2, epistemology, reason. 3, ethics, self-interest. 4, politics, capitalism. And then she went on, if you want this translated into simple language, it would read 1, nature to be commanded must be obeyed, or wishing won't make it so. 2, you can't have your cake and eat it too. 3, man is an end in himself. And 4, give me liberty or give me death. And this is still quoting Ayn Rand, if you held these concepts with total consistency as the base of your convictions, you would have a full philosophic system to guide the course of your life. But to hold them with full consistency, to understand, to define, to prove, and to apply them requires volumes of thought, which is why philosophy cannot be discussed while standing on one foot, nor while standing on 2 feet on both sides of every fence. This last is the predominant philosophical position today, particularly in the field of politics. In the space of a column, I can only give the briefest summary of my position. And then she went on to explain the 4. Now she leaves out the 5th branch of philosophy, aesthetics, which of course she eventually integrated into her full system. She says, my philosophy objectivism holds that 1, reality exists as an objective absolute, facts are facts, independent of man's feelings, wishes, hopes, or fears. 2, Reason, the faculty which identifies and integrates the material provided by man's senses, is man's only means of perceiving reality, his only source of knowledge, his only guide to action, and his basic means of survival. 3, man, every man is an end in himself, not the means to the ends of others. He must exist for his own sake, neither sacrificing himself to others nor sacrificing others to himself. The pursuit of his own rational self-interest and of his own happiness is the highest moral purpose of his life. And number 4, the ideal political economic system is laissez-faire capitalism. Unquote. And she went on to explain that more at length. I have a new super chat. Apollo Zeus says, for £2, I love Robert Nasir more than anyone. Smartest thing you've ever said, because I have exactly the same feeling. I love Robert Nasir more than anyone too. Thank you for that super chat. Again, any super chats that are put in, go on to support the Ayn Rand Center UK. The money doesn't come to me because now I'm an objectivist. I'm independently wealthy. I'm sure all of you who've applied these ideas are too, or are on your way there. And that is kind of part of the point I want to make. I'm exaggerating about that much, but not too much. So you see here, we have Ayn Rand providing in one essay 3 different levels of simplicity, of summarization, of essentialization. And so now, since we have a bunch of people in the chat sharing very clever things, and I know you're all very sharp, here's what I want for you to share with me in the chat. What is your shortest, most useful, and most compelling answer to the question, what is your philosophy? Tell me in the chat, what is your philosophy in the fewest words you can use to... Now, I've given my own answer in 4 words. You don't have to make it that short. And I've also written it as a sort of manifesto. And though this latter, the manifesto, is pretty casual, it is not a philosophical treatise, but it's served me well. You know, I've read it before on the show. Well, it takes less than 2 minutes to read, so I'll go ahead and read it again. This is Robert Nasir's philosophy for living. It comes down to this: live the best life you can. So you, hey, look at the camera. I gotta make the point here, because you, the person I'm talking to right now, you were gifted a life. You were gifted a life free and clear. You were born. And one day you're going to die. Make of your life what you will, as you wish. As bold and adventurous, or as silly and outrageous, or as ambitious and industrious, or as quiet and pleasant as you like, and ideally with few regrets. Values. Values matter a lot. Disvalues and threats, very little. So focus on the former as much as you can. Tend to the latter as much as you must. Your means to achieve this is to think and to act, to use your mind and your body. The first is primary. Your reasoning mind is the source of every value beyond the animal level, beyond gathering nuts and berries. Now, the power of a conceptual level consciousness to transcend the immediate moment's thoughts and concerns is so magnificent that when it's multiplied by 2, by 10, by 1,000, by 7 billion, 8 billion now, it has led to all of the miracles of modern living, which we experience and take for granted, from cheap and bountiful food and shelter and clothing to unprecedented safety and security, to dazzling technology, to endless art and literature and music and sport, and values too numerous to list. Now, what's true of your nature, the need to be free to think and to act on your thinking, is true of everybody else as well. Respect this fact in others. And once you establish that, then you can get to the business of meeting and engaging and trading with and befriending and loving everyone you can. And you should. You deserve to love and to be loved. You deserve the spotlight, at least every now and then. You deserve the rewards of every good action you have taken. But these rewards won't always come of their own accord. Karma requires a driver. So ring your own bell, blow your own horn, squeak your own wheel. Take care of those you call your own and keep good company. A tragedy, failure, drama, injustice, outrage, sadness will touch each of us. And that is as it should be. Values cannot be automatic nor guaranteed. Human beings are fallible, breakable, limited, finite. Suffer when you must, and as gracefully as you can. But in essence, life is good. If it wasn't, we wouldn't, but we do. So, do. Okay, a little bit longer than, my philosophy in essence is the concept of man as a heroic being with his own happiness as the moral purpose of his life, with productive achievement as his noblest activity and reason as his only absolute. But I think you need that. I think you need the short version and you need the long version. I haven't given you the short version yet. Now, before I give you my shortest version, objectivism in 4 words or less, I have a question to answer from a previous super thanks comment on YouTube. Besides the super chats that some of you have been so good to leave, keep them coming. But besides the super chats, you can, in comments you add later to a video, if you didn't hear it live, you can also hit a $sign there, add in super thanks. The very generous Jeff Bannister previously asked a question. In fact, he had asked a question about whether he could ask questions. When people put in super thanks and put in a comment, can they also put in a question that we'll answer later? I said, well, that's a great idea. We should have thought of that all along. So last week, following my discussion of and answer to, week before last, I took a week off, Will MacAskill's futurism. Incidentally, I think my answer to Will MacAskill was brilliant. And if you didn't hear that episode, you totally should. His idea that we should give some thought to and make some sacrifices for future generations. And he doesn't mean your kids or your kids' kids. He means many, many generations down the line. The same generous gentleman posted this comment with a generous tip to the Ayn Rand Center UK from Jeff Bannister 2 days ago. 2 days ago is when I printed this out. So a week and a half ago. I have been saddled. Man, did I feel this when I read it? I have been saddled like a thoroughbred racehorse right from my birth with the ballast of debt heaped upon me from my forefathers' altruism, refinanced and mortgaged, exposed to future risk or constraint for the sake of immediate advantage. Obviously, he means their advantage, not his advantage. They're present, he goes on, they're present with our future payments on that debt. And then Jeff goes on, and he's obviously talking about Will MacAskill and his allies. He says, how can he justify this current and continuing practice of money printing and consider it a great moral thing to leave for future generations? Now, that's a great question. Now, 2 things. One, I believe the best way to understand anyone, even if you disagree with them, they're wrong. The best way to understand anyone is to first assume that they actually believe what they're saying. They actually believe they are right. And 2, I'm a huge optimist in regard to the future. And unlike some of my colleagues, I'm finding that despite the news of the day and many bad trends in culture and politics, my optimism continues to grow. I see things getting better all the time, unless you are tightly focused on the culture war. Now Lee Pearson, who I hope returns to the channel soon. He's been doing some great shows on advanced epistemology. But he answered me once on his Clubhouse after his show. Lee Pearson regards the optimism of Matt Ridley and Steven Pinker and Johan Norberg, et cetera. He regards that optimism as flawed because the Steven Pinkers and the Matt Ridleys, they don't regard mixed economies to be bad. In some cases, and in many ways, they accept or even advocate for welfare statism, social security, socialized medicine, other so-called safety nets. And so when, like in The Better Angels of Our Nature and Enlightenment Now, Steven Pinker states, for example, that advocating for animal rights is just part of this positive trend toward greater respect for the rights of conscious creatures. Well, we need to think rationally and first-handedly about how Pinker's optimism translates into the actual facts of reality. So Dr. Pearson's right to make these observations and advise these qualifications. Believe me when I say, when it comes to my own personal optimism, my excitement for the future, my belief that things are getting better all the time, and I think the evidence is overwhelming, and they are most likely to continue to do so, and will at an accelerating pace. But I do take that mix of good, and bad masquerading as good. I do take that into account. I do understand that the rational optimists are considering some things to be good, which are actually bad. We are living in more than a mixed economy. We're living in a mixed morality, a mixed philosophy, a mixed everything. So if you think I don't take evil into account enough, consider listening to my episode, Pollyanna in the Paperless Office, episode with Amy Nasir, Pollyanna in the Paperless Office, Where's My Flying Car? If you want to hear my pessimistic side, or rather what I take into account in regard to my optimism. To repeat the salient point, unlike some free market economists and other pundits, well, I don't expect a total financial collapse because I believe the disaster, the collapse, is already happening. As good as things are, and as many improvements as we've got coming, it's still true, this isn't the world we should have been living in 2023. Yes, I believe we are surrounded by miracles, not least of which is ourselves. And more miracles, the products of man's reason, virtue, ambition, the division of labor, economies of scale, the deployment of increasingly massive capital. More miracles are coming soon, stuff we won't believe. More powerful treatments for cancer and other previously incurable life-threatening conditions. The reversal of most of the factors of aging and easily replaceable limbs and organs. More effective energy technologies like large and small-scale distributed nuclear fusion, practical nuclear fission. Ubiquitous, high-speed, reliable, and dirt-cheap connectivity everywhere. Practical augmented reality and artificial intelligence, quite literally far beyond anything we're seeing with ChatGPT, far beyond our own imaginations. We're not going to know what this stuff can do until we see it. Just as a lot of us couldn't have imagined what 2023 was going to look like in our 20s or 30s. And we're going to see 24/7 real-world brick-and-mortar access to vendors and service providers and restaurants and services and entertainment and coaches and counselors. We'll have cars that run indefinitely and run for a year on a small cube of uranium. And again, these miracles should not be in the future. For Pete's sake, it is 2023. It is the future. These miracles should have been in our rearview mirror already. And so my answer to Jeff, to the question, how can Will MacAskill and countless other advocates of altruism the so-called effective altruists, any kind of altruism, how can they advocate taking more and more from you and me? In my case, hundreds of thousands of dollars in FICA alone, money which, even if it were to be paid back to me in Social Security and Medicare, could never make up for what that money could have meant in my life and to those that I love. How can they justify all of this? And my answer is, their ends justify your means. And their ends include both altruism and statism. They hold that sacrifice is a moral good and that the state knows best how to provide for you, at least in these ways that they advocate. And that combination is the 1-2 punch. So my answer to the statists is twofold, two answers. One, if McCaskill was here, especially if Singer was here right now, I would say, one, you are not right. Your ideas are wrong. You may believe you are right, but I hope you come to understand that your premises, altruism and collectivism, your premises are wrong. And two, you do not have the right, the moral and the political right, to impose your ideas. Right or wrong, you have no right to impose those ideas on others. You do not have the right. You think you do, but your justification for this imposition, oh, it's a high ideal, it's for your own good. Oh, the majority wants it. Your justification is at root nothing more than because I can, because I can get away with it. You are not right, and you do not have the right. And that leads me to the answer to the question, what's the shortest answer you have to the question, what is your philosophy? I like some of the comments here. To love my happy little life. Very good, Michael. Life is getting better, says Jeff. And Jeff, you shared that with us before. I'm so glad that these ideas are really paying off for you lately. He mentions, incidentally, there really are flying cars now. Well, we're getting there. And the things we've got that fly, whether it's ultralight aircraft, new drone technology, jetpacks, there are ways to do it, but nothing like what it's going to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I'm looking forward to it. Totally. My answer to the question, what is your philosophy? If you said, give it to me in 4 words less, it's simple. Think rationally, act accordingly. That might sound lightweight, or it might sound really clever. Carry that around for a week. If you catch yourself, and I do still at my age, if you catch yourself wondering if you're doing the right thing or tempted to do the wrong thing, and you can remind yourself with that shorthand, wait, going on my feelings here. Or I know what the right thing is to do, but I can't get myself to do it. Wait. Think rationally, act accordingly. All right. If it's rational, it's going to get me where I want to go. That changes my motivation, reminding myself there. Act accordingly also reminds me, oh yeah, integrity matters. Equal to reality says, I live for my rational happiness only. Good. I hope someday you'll leave the word only off. I know at a certain point in life, enough people are demanding sacrifices. You got to keep that there to keep that from happening. Yes. And Apollo Zeus shares with us, of course, the wisdom of Conan the Barbarian. You can read that in the chat. The reason why I have my 2-page manifesto, a nearly memorized manifesto, is I do need to call on it whenever I'm erring, whenever I'm making a complex or difficult decision, and whenever I've gone off track. And when I need to make a quick decision, when it's all too easy to weigh my own feelings and mixed motivations and strong temptations and just low energy. And if I say to myself, and I find it's best if you're going to do this, say it out loud, words, put it out there. Maybe that's so much more reality when you say things out loud. It's like reading poetry. Never read poetry in a book. Always read it out loud. If I find in those moments I say to myself out loud, oh yeah, think rationally, act accordingly, I feel a healthy surge of motivation just right there. It usually follows just saying the words. It's like, if you had one of those model trains and they'd go off the track and then you kind of work it back onto the track. And when you feel it's on the track again, that great feeling, oh, okay. All right, I'm back on track. So yes, know your short version and be able to say it out loud whenever you need it. Jeff, you're very kind. Jeff is in with the super chat, says, thanks for the great answer, Robert. Well, if it is a great answer, it is because you are willing to apply it in your own life and think about it firsthand. So I do, and I hope you do too. I do keep studying and learning and developing my understanding of what it means to live a virtuous, successful, end in itself life. But once your understanding of life is fully and deeply and richly understood, I'll finish that sentence in a moment. Before I wrap up, if you are not already a member of the Ayn Rand Center UK, you know what to do. If you've heard these shows before, at the top of the chat, there is a link to take you to the AynRandCenter.co.uk website where you can click Become a Member. Remember, any super chats that you put into this episode, any episode on the ARC UK, supports the Institute. It's where the money comes from. Your memberships, your super chat, your contributions to the organizations, all of it is appreciated. All of it goes to support, if you're anything like me, and I know you are, goes to support your values and the impact of this organization on the spread of this philosophy in the world. Speaking of the spread of this philosophy, if you like this show, please consider clicking the like button. If you really like this show, please consider clicking the share button. Spread it around, get these episodes out here. Now, my episodes normally get a couple hundred views. As many of the shows on the channel will get hundreds of views. We want to see that go to thousands. We want to see that go to tens of thousands. I know there are tens to hundreds of thousands of devoted objectivists out there and millions of Ayn Rand fans. The audience is out there. Share it. Some people might look at you like, oh, you're sharing that Ayn Rand stuff? And then they'll listen to it and say, oh, yeah, that was pretty cool. Who knows what kind of reactions you'll get. Put it out there. Make it happen. If nothing else, it will make life more interesting. So thank you for your support. Thank you for continuing to listen. Thank you for staying with me. And again, oh, by the way, there will be Clubhouse after, since E2R was so good to ask at the beginning. Yes, there will be a Clubhouse. We're still reworking our Clubhouse strategy on Life on Earth with Robert Nasir, but I will be on. I do want to hear more of what you have to say about this topic and find out how you're doing. But once your understanding of life, this philosophy, but more broadly, your life, once your understanding of life is fully and deeply and richly understood, rationally, logically proven, fundamentally validated, down to its premises, out of its countless applications, it really comes down to this. Think rationally and act accordingly. And have yourself a magnificent life on Earth.